All right, I am recording. It's March the 10th, so I heard the bad news on Facebook, man. What's up?
Well, for me, I'm got found guilty of conspiracy to impede, and everybody got found guilty of something. The two guys that two guys got found guilty of depredation, not guilty of conspiracy or the other one, and one guy got found guilty of the conspiracy and possession of firearms and furtherance of a conspiracy. So Daryl Thorne was found guilty of 2 charges, and I was found guilty of 1 charge, and the other 2 guys were found guilty of another charge.
So the state came back with some convictions. How the hell did it happen?
It's hard to say. There was a little bit different testimony in this one. I've said it before, the compelling nature of the case sort of makes for a compelling thing. And like everybody each one of those jurors knew of the verdict. That the other folks were found not guilty. And so if the other jurors knew that they were found not guilty, and everybody sort of wants there to be consequences for this protest that they didn't like, and the jurors don't know that there's 3 other misdemeanor charges that we're being charged with, they believe they're the end all.
The jury didn't know that?
No, the jury doesn't know there's misdemeanor charges being decided by the judge.
What prevented that?
Well, it's whatever they knew of the case prior to. And then, the the judge and the prosecution worked to keep stuff from the jury.
So basically, the jury was like, somebody needs to be made an example of, but they weren't privy to. You guys had your necks on the block for some other stuff when their job was done.
Right.
That sucks.
So, yeah. So that it is what it is, right? The silver lining is you don't get to file appeals without a guilty verdict. So without a guilty verdict, we don't get to appeal the not giving us a right to jury trial on all of the charges, only certain charges going in front of the jury and certain charges going in front of the judge. And, the collateral estoppel motion that I made before, there's, we've been laying the groundwork for, the way, how do you change things? We've talked about this before. How do you change things? My goal is peaceful assembly to petition the government for redress of grievances. Seems to me an effective way to affect change. Well, another way to affect change is through the appeals process in court. Mm-hmm. But the only way you get to an appeals process in court is with a guilty verdict. So,
so you haven't been sentenced yet?
No, sentencing right now is scheduled for, I think, May 10th, and that will probably get extended some. So.
Okay. Now, did the judge make a ruling on the misdemeanors today?
No, she had a deadline for the prosecution and the defense to file some more paperwork that was today, and so I wouldn't expect her ruling till, I don't know, maybe Wednesday. She usually takes about four days to review, and I don't know if she'll review over the weekend or not.
Okay, I know I couldn't get a hold of you earlier today, and I was like, oh man, I hope they didn't take him into custody already, because typically, there's he's flight risk, so.
Think about that. That's interesting too, right? So Ammon Bundy has never been found guilty of anything, and he's still in jail. And now I'm a convicted felon, and I'm not. So that's an interesting, just looking at it from the outside looking in.
Yeah, it is ironic. So, what's the what kind of sentence does your conviction carry?
The maximum sentence on the felony is 6 months and I think a $250,000 fine.
Can that be converted to community service?
I don't know.
I
I
could
don't
help you
know.
out.
I think somebody pled guilty to that charge and is going to get 6 months home detention.
Yeah.
And then, it's hard to say.
Okay.
Sentencing guidelines are up to the judge, and
So
I sort of,
we're not looking at years.
well, it's up to the judge. You should give me the max. I mean, we haven't been pals, so that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so obviously an appeal, you are going to appeal it.
hmm
Okay. Now, how did
From
you
day
feel?
one, the very
Yeah.
first thing I said to my lawyer is, you won't get any justice in a federal court. Fight for the appeal.
Hmm.
Um, so that's always been the case. The fact that we, they didn't let him read the Constitution in the whole first trial, which I don't know if I can appeal that because our lawyers didn't even really try to read the Constitution.
Right.
So,
Jesus. So if you do the appeals process, what are the chances of seeing another judge, or is this, man? What?
well,
How's that going to work
near,
out?
near as I can tell, appeals take about 2 years.
Uh-huh.
So, I think I will have served my sentence and be out by the time I get to appeal.
Hmm.
But appeal is for change, right? I don't really know. Appeals process is new ground for me, so I'll be learning a lot, and so it's the beginning, right? So
Hmm.
this isn't the end for me; it's the beginning. I get to learn a bunch of new stuff about the appeals process and see how long it takes and where it goes and what it does, and
How did you? I mean, I know that we discussed it before, and you kind of said you expected a not or a guilty, and then an appeals. But how did you feel? I mean, I'm sure it didn't feel rosy whenever they read the
um,
verdict.
the only thing that bothered me was that the jury didn't kn- didn't get to didn't get to review all the charges.
Mhm.
Whether they found me guilty of conspiracy anyways, or if they were just looking for some vindication in something they thought was wrong. It's I don't know what the jury saw or thought. Um, and at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
well,
the only
let's
thing that bothers me is all the charges aren't seen and ruled on by the jury.
right. Well, let's backtrack a little bit because I think last time we actually talked about testimony, they had finished parading all the FBI agents and guns, and more guns and bullets and all of that. And I think the Bundys testified, and this guy Blaine Cooper, I suppose. Uh, who came in to testify after all that?
Ammon testified after Blaine Cooper, and then the people from the area testified. Glad we were there and heard about the Constitution. They didn't believe what was happening to Hammond should be happening. And um, I don't know. Basically, that there was some character witnesses for Dwayne and Jake. That the sheriffs in their county know them to be good men, know them to be. But at the end of the day, it didn't make a difference here. So.
Right. Well, that sucks, dude. I know. Whenever I found out about it, I was like, "What? How the hell?"
And
But
there's a probably a terrorism enhancement in my sentencing. So you know me, dude. I'm an activist, and I want to redress grievances. I want the government to pay attention to the problems that people see, and because of that, now I'm going to have a terrorist enhancement on the
yeah,
sentencing because
great.
this is America.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, I mean, there's got to be some good that comes out of it. I mean, you and I both know there's always a divine plan. Uh, so I mean, I guess I need to brush up on my knowledge about the appeals process. I guess you do too. Because I just I don't
Yeah,
understand how a jury could have come
uh,
back with that.
yeah, it's a that's a 24-person swing. 12 people found the first group not guilty, and now 12 people found us guilty. So that's a 24-person swing.
Yeah.
You know, I made the collateral estoppel motion. About trying the same charges with the same evidence, and that was ruled against. And how do we affect change if it's not through peaceful assembly to petition the government for redress of grievances,
Mm.
right? In other jurisdictions, people burn the city down and then get no complainant or misdemeanor charges, and here I did some, and I'm guilty of conspiracy with a terrorism enhancement.
And
But this is America.
the full charge is conspiracy to impede a federal officer.
Yeah,
Or
through violence, force, threat, or intimidation.
what testimony or evidence? I mean, well, my mind is just being boggled right now because even the prosecution said there would be no direct evidence, so it all had to be by inferment. Uh,
Right.
that's insane. Well, I'm sure like you've talked to a good amount of people since the verdict came out. Are people like as confused as I am about it?
Um, I don't know. Like I said, it's so compelling. There's people who believe that is what it is, and it's a protest, and there's people who believe that it's a conspiracy. So it just depends on who you ask. It's very similar. For the way I look at it, it's very similar to the presidential election, and people have strong feelings about who was who and what was what. And this protest was no different.
Wow, man, it's insane, dude. So you said? It'd be probably May until sentencing.
Yeah, right now it's scheduled for May 10th.
Okay, so there's no chance of you being taken into custody unless you do something stupid until then.
Yeah, unless I break the law of some kind.
Okay. Are you allowed to leave the state and visit your family?
I'm allowed to be in Washington, Oregon, and Georgia.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I would expect that you're probably gonna head this way before May.
I'm gonna try to get some things worked out down there. So,
Well, you got a roof.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah. So, it's hard to say. You know, how do you? The question remains: how do you affect positive change?
Mm. Yeah, no
How
man.
how do you how do you how do you change the land issues that were talked about and make it where what happened to Dwight can't happen to anyone else, if not through a peaceful assembly to petition the government for redress of grievances?
Hmm. Well, I know that this is probably going to, as a result of it, it's going to make people more hesitant in the future to engage in any type of redress of grievance. Uh,
Yeah, but what does that leave them?
yeah, that's the question, isn't it? What do you do? What do you do when this happens?
Right? What if you can't do that? What does that leave you? If you can't peacefully assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances and protect yourself while doing so, what does that leave you?
Hmm, not a good question to ask.
What what recourse does that leave?
Not any, not anywhere good. Not anywhere good.
Right.
It's been a
So
bad. It's been a bum day, dude. Ever since I found out about it, dude, I just had this stink over me.
I mean, I'm not. I don't know that I'm bummed. Like I said, without a verdict, there's no. Without a guilty verdict on some level, there's no appeal, and without an appeal, there's no change.
Well, then that looks like it's the long game, but that looks like the area you're being forced to go into.
Right. I wish that people didn't have to be found guilty of crimes to try to affect change. I wish you could just effectively affect change.
Right.
But it is what it is.
What will? Do you think that there was like a major difference in this trial than the first trial that swung it that way, or if it was just the whole idea of making somebody an example?
Well, from the legal standpoint, the attorneys didn't like Marcus Mumford, but what Marcus Mumford did was he tried to turn over every rock and every stone and show everything that was there. And and and, and most people didn't like that approach. I liked it. And so the attorneys that fought this one wanted a cleaner case. And the problem is it's not a clean case. It's actually pretty messy. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't really know.
Yeah, I saw something on your Facebook feed. I don't want to read into it, but I'll let you dialogue about it. That uh, the mention or the way that Lavoy Finicum was mentioned, I suppose, in closing statements or something, upset you. What was that?
Um, well, they were talking, that was in the misdemeanor trial. So after the jury trial was over, we had a short um, trial for the misdemeanors. And Jeffrey Barrow said something about, but the arrest of Lavoy Finicum, and like everybody was like, oh, he said Lavoy Finicum, because they've been steadily saying that anything about Lavoy Finicum was inadmissible in the felony trial, and here he's mentioning it in the misdemeanor trial.
Hmm.
And I'm like trying to connect, what happened to Lavoy Finicum to the misdemeanors is profoundly wrong. Like I couldn't even believe the prosecution mentioned it.
Hmm.
And some people said he just did it in error. And if so, it's a pretty glaring error, right?
Hmm.
So I was upset based on everything they had done up to that point that he would even mention Lavoy Finicum in the misdemeanors trial.
Hmm.
To what purpose does that serve? Except for, I mean, I don't know.
All right, man. This sucks, dude. But I mean, it, I guess it's in the plan. you know.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you change comes through appeals. I do know that. Like I've seen change come through the appellate process. Appealing, unfortunately I'm in the Ninth Circuit, so their track record isn't that great.
Mm.
But, if I'm going to be appealing for the Sixth and Seventh Amendment to be respected, despite the Baldwin ruling, uh, that's where we go from here.
So if you appeal and you've already served your time, it, is this for the purpose of? I mean, obviously, it's for the purpose of making a wrong right, and I would assume to expunge this shit from your record.
Yeah, well, you can hope.
Uh, Not that that would really do any good with law enforcement interaction for you anyway, but
Well,
just
considering that that now I'm a felon and I will lose my rights based on a felony charge, then yeah, getting that felony removed is a good thing. I know there's already people working on the laws as they restrict felons already, and so now I'm in that category. So,
Jesus. Oh,
right,
it also
a felony protest.
yeah, and that man that comes with such a stigma, and
Yeah,
we know that just because you got the label felon on your jacket doesn't necessarily mean you could be using medicinal cannabis
yeah,
and be a felon. It doesn't mean that you're violent, but in the eyes of law enforcement in the world, especially job applications, dude. Good luck. You know,
Well,
this
we
is
all
it.
know that there's people in Houston County that are dancing a jig because Jason's now a felon. So
Probably. I haven't asked. I've stayed away from them. But
so
Jesus. So 6 months back where they had you to begin with.
I mean, depending on the duration of the stay that I'm assigned, I could, if it's more than a year, I'll wind up in a federal prison. But uh, I don't even really know. I haven't looked at it.
I
I
wonder.
didn't
I
think it would
wonder
happen.
if that judge comes back with guilties on the misdemeanors, if they'll be simultaneous, or back to back, or how that would work.
I don't know that either.
Yeah, I'm sure she's not going to cut you any slack, but
Yeah, we'll see. It's all new from here. New
yeah.
for me anyway. So,
Well, has Catherine or Alex or anybody gotten a hold of you, or any legal
I think
people?
Catherine posted, something to the effect of it's disappointing, and she's praying for me and whatever. So we'll see.
Right. Well, you'll have Skype access, so at least you'll have a soapbox out here.
Right.
I guess it's a good thing we started doing this.
Yeah. We'll have to
Because
figure out a way to do it from there and see what there's still 3 trials happening down in Nevada and see how that goes.
when is that going to start up?
Well, one of them's already underway,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're trying to push the next one 200 days out, even though they already ruled that it would be 30 days out. So, who knows?
And do you think that these convictions are gonna, well, obviously, if they're gonna have an effect there in Nevada?
Well, at the end of the day, it's 12 people get to decide. So I
Yeah.
think what affects it most is which 12 people.
Do you know of anybody who did any interviews with the jury after they were dismissed to ask them
I'm not
why?
aware of any. I'm not aware of any interviews with the jury. I think this jury will be more vocal um, so we'll see what happens.
Repeat that because you broke up a little bit.
I know this jury will be more popular in Oregon,
Yeah.
so I would think they would be more vocal, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear. I'm sure somebody got some type of statements from them as they were coming out. I would really like to hear, how they reached the verdict that they did, and if they were told afterwards that, there was also some misdemeanor charges too. I'd like to find out about that.
Right.
To me, it just doesn't seem, well, it doesn't seem American to withhold critical information for a jury when they're going into deliberation that it does decide the fate of people's lives, for God's sake. You know,
Right.
for
Oh, I didn't tell you. March is turkey season in Georgia. So I had a
say that again because you broke up.
I said March is turkey season in Georgia, so I had a turkey call in court with me today.
Did you blow it?
Yes, I did.
Oh.
Multiple times.
Any reaction from the judge?
No, from the marshals though.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah. I
so
wish that we had freedom of press in the courtroom.
yeah. Whatever happened to
So
that?
well, they've determined that press in the courtroom is only written word. That this is 2017, and everybody knows that most of the press uses a camera, but it's not allowed in the courtroom. And why would it be? The Wizard of Oz doesn't function very well without the curtain,
Yeah, that's true.
right?
Yep.
Once you remove the curtain, the wizard looks sort of funny.
Yes, it does.
So you got to keep that curtain up so nobody can look inside. and see that the wizard.
Mm. So, when's the next time you got to report back to court? Just whenever she comes to her decision on the misdemeanors?
Well, no, she'll do that in writing. We don't have to appear. So right now it looks like May 10th.
May 10th?
Yep.
Well, I guess I expect to see you very soon then.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get her done.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go take a nap.
I understand, dude. I'm gonna go ahead and get this one out, and let's try to get together again and discuss, whatever we need to discuss to get you some resources to face whatever. I hate it for you, dude. I'm praying for you. Mom came home today, and
All right, man.
she heard the news, and she was like, "Well, tell him I said hey, and I'm praying for him." So you got a lot of people doing that, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, dude. Get you some sleep. We'll talk later.
And so it begins. And so it begins.
No rest for the weary.
Some people think it's the end, and I look at it as "and so it begins."
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, dude. Get you some sleep. We'll talk later.
All right.
Later.
All right. This whole thing is essentially a peaceful assembly to petition the government for redress of grievances. The First Amendment of the Constitution to effect positive change. That's my testimony. I never took the stand, but that's basically what it is. So you have a group of people that assembled and had a redress of grievances about rural issues that they wanted answers to. And what happened is nobody answered them. So nobody answered any of the grievances, and they shot a man and brought everybody else here for a year to do all this. If they would have acquitted me of all the charges, that's where it ends. Nothing changes, nothing happens. But through a guilty verdict, now there's an appeals process where we can talk about other constitutional violations and move forward in that arena.
Do you plan to appeal the
Absolutely.
verdicts then?
The very first time I ever talked to a lawyer, I said, we will be appealing any guilty verdicts. The redress of grievances, which is a very important thing that nobody knows about due to no media coverage, I guess, because it's always been there, is totally ignored. Now, there is talk of different things happening now because of what happened, but the actual trying to talk to your legislators and say, this is really important, and especially what's happening to this man right now as a result of these things, and this isn't right, and we want you to look at it, and what they do is completely ignore you, is not really how things should be. It shouldn't take that much effort. But now the whole world knows, the whole world sees. Hopefully there's a whole lot more dialogue happening about it. And it's sort of the same as a result of this. With a complete acquittal, the dialogue ends. With a guilty verdict, appeals move forward. We continue talking about constitutional issues and violations. And the judge made a pretty clear record. Like the removal of the misdemeanors is very important. The jury doesn't even know we're charged with misdemeanors. So if the jury's trying to send a message like, hey, we don't like what happened, and so we have to find somebody guilty of something. And so that's what they did. And they don't even know that there's misdemeanors because they weren't given to the jury. That's a constitutional violation. The Second Amendment says in matters of life and liberty, I have a right to a jury trial. And the Seventh Amendment says in matters of property over $20, I have a right to a jury trial. All that went away here. So the jury's in the dark, right? The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Well, the truth is we're charged with misdemeanors and you don't even know that we're charged with misdemeanors. And because of the nature of things, you might want to find us guilty of those misdemeanors, but you don't even get the option. So the judge created a very clear record and almost completely identified an appealable issue. She says, I don't know if I have the authority to give you a jury trial or not, and even if I did, I wouldn't give it to you. It's a pretty strong appeal. And so that's where you're at.
Yeah. So the silver lining of this, you said, for you is that at least the dialogue is now continuing.
Sure.
Because if there had been a across the board acquittal, that wouldn't have happened.
Yep. I mean, the point is, there's bad things happening, and I think the world should know about it. Now they do, sort of, if they're listening and paying attention. And it's reported accurately, right? That's the really terrible thing about this is the inflammatory nature of the coverage. The coverage of the event didn't want to give credence or credibility to the message that was being delivered, and then completely changed it into what sells newspapers and advertising on stations. Had we covered it accurately and said what it really was, we might not be doing this. We might be actually affecting positive change. But drama sells newspapers, so make it the most dramatic thing you can, and there you go.
Do you think the verdict today is fair after the first trial where everyone was found not guilty, and now today people are being found?
No, not at all. I mean, the thing about this is, if you think that what happens in court is about truth, justice, and the American way, I think you're a little bit deceived. This is a theatrical performance where the public picks winners and losers. It's not necessarily about the truth. It's about this was a government production. It's government theater is what happens. You can't say everything you want to say. That's why do you swear to tell the truth? I'm like, as much as it's allowed in this venue. That's what I told him. Because you won't allow me to tell you the truth. There'll be all kinds of objections and whatever. The actual truth will not even be allowed to be told. So I can't take an oath to tell the whole truth because you don't allow it. So is it unfair? I got the same system, right? I got a jury trial by jury, and that jury said something different. So as far as fair as it is, I mean, I got the same opportunity and a different jury. But I like the jury system. I just wish we would tell them the whole truth and allow them to deliberate on all the charges. I should have a jury of my peers for all the charges you charge. The fact that you took that away from me, give me this verdict here. This verdict is delivered by nature of not telling the jury the entire truth, in my opinion.
Anything else that you want to add or that you think the general public should know?
Yeah, Dwight Hammond, and Dwight Hammond.
Thank you. Steve Hammond.
Downloaded content podcast. Download.